Today I'm going to be filming a true crime video. It's going to be a first of many on my channel because I'd like to incorporate true crime videos into my channel. A bit of context about me: I have studied criminology undergrad and postgrad, and I just find cases like these, like the one that I'm going to talk about, and a lot of the ones that are on YouTube, really interesting. So today's case is the case, or one of the cases, that started the hashtag Men Are Trash, and it's based in South Africa, Johannesburg to be precise. Today's case is about the beautiful Karabo Mokoena. She was born March 27th, 1995 to her mother Lorraine Mokoena, but she's known or referred to mostly as Lolo, and her dad Tabang, or Thabang, I'll say it's Tabang, I don't know, I think I'm saying it wrong, Tabang Mokoena. She's one of 3 children, so she has 2 siblings, an older sister who was 6 years older than her called Bontle Mokoena, and a younger brother called Lebogang. Karabo and Bontle were really close. They really had a close-knit bond. However, they had opposite personalities, whereas Bontle was more reserved, a homebody, didn't have many friends. Karabo was the total opposite. She was like sociable, outgoing, had loads of friends, loved interacting with people, and most specifically very confident. She was particularly passionate about women's empowerment, specifically like women who are abused, moving away from their past, their abusive past, moving away from it, growing away from it, and becoming empowered and strong within themselves.
People just want to know how you overcame it. You can give us your problem from A to... People just want to know the solution. Yo, you went through this, and therefore, how did you come out of it? No one wants to know, it's okay, Mina, I saw no. Stop playing victim. The world owes you nothing. Arise from that dark place and be someone.
She was so passionate that she wanted to start her own foundation for abused women. Fast forward, at the age of 21, she met a man called Sandile Manswe, and they started dating October 2017. Sandile was 28 years old at the time that they met, and he had a degree in graphic design, but his career path was far away from graphic design. He actually became a successful foreign exchange trader. In addition to this, he held courses called Trillion Dollar Legacy that he would charge 12,000 rands. So that's South African money. So 12,000 rands per person for the course. Yeah, like a lot of people would sign up to his course because he was really successful. The reason why he held this course was to basically educate and give tips on how others could also become successful foreign exchange traders like him. His loved ones, or his close ones, describe him as slow-tempered, highly religious. Like, he even had the capability of reciting the Bible verbatim. He was so religious to the point where, like I said, he did a degree in graphic design, so they would have art classes at university, and there's an old classmate of his told this story, this anecdote, saying that in one of their art classes, one of the tasks was them to draw a naked body, and he refused to do it because it wasn't part of the will of God. So that's just to show the extent of how religious he was. Although I'm describing someone that seems quite modest and demure and, like, you know, just chill, laid back, he, at the same time as him being slow-tempered, highly religious, he also lived a luxury, like, kind of baller lifestyle. He had several cars, like a fleet of cars, luxury cars, and he would go out to clubs and stuff like that, and he wasn't shy to show it off. Like, he wasn't modest with it. Like, he would take pictures, flexing, all of that. So yeah, as many relationships, their relationship started off good on his obviously honeymoon phase and all of that, but after a couple of months, Karabo confided in her sister Bontle, letting her know that sometimes Sandile would address her in a manner that she didn't like, she didn't appreciate, I guess like she didn't. It's not specified what manner it was, but I'm guessing it was like a harsh manner or like a rude manner that she just didn't like, basically. As the relationship progressed, Karabo moved in with Sandile at his luxury Santon Sky apartment. Now, Santon in Johannesburg is apparently like a luxury area, like, yeah, luxury apartments, nice, all of that. Cool. So she moved in with him at his apartment. As the relationship intensified, it also got violent at the same time, with Sandile being the aggressor. Karabo had confided in a friend of hers, letting her know that one time her and Sandile had gotten into an argument and he had pushed her up against the wall and smashed her phone. But despite this, they still remained together. Around 6 months into their relationship, on Karabo's 22nd birthday, Sandile had severely beaten up Karabo to the point where she needed to be hospitalized. He had also smashed her phone once again. Sandile literally just brought her to the hospital and abandoned her there. She wasn't able to get a hold of her family, like her family or friends at first, because obviously her phone was smashed, but I don't know, with the help of like nurses, or she basically managed to get a hold of her family, and she called her mum and let her know, like, basically I'm in hospital and it's because Sandile beat me up. Before calling her mother didn't know about the previous abuse, like, you know, being handled not in a manner that she appreciated, and being pushed against the wall. Her mother didn't know any of this, but at that point, that's when she disclosed to her mum that actually, you know, this relationship is actually abusive. So her mum pleaded with her to please leave him, move back home, and get an order against him. And because Karabo had been badly beaten, she did not contest. So when she went to the police to report the assault and also seek out an injunction against him, which is like a restraining order basically, she found out that he had actually laid a charge on her while she was in hospital, saying that she had beat him up and vandalized his car. Upon finding this out, Karabo was just like, wow, like she was distraught, she was shocked, and because that's just not what happened. And the fact that he was able to beat her up so severely yet lie on her, abandon her in hospital, like all of that was just a lot for her to take in. And she got discouraged. She didn't want to press charges anymore. She didn't even want to get an order against him anymore. And she specifically told her mum that this man's an evil man, and I just know wherever he is, he's planning something evil to do to me. The reason why the charge was able to be laid against Karabo is because he actually did have visible bruising and scratches, and his car was vandalized, but it wasn't because of Karabo. He had gotten into a spat with a group of people that he owed money to a few days before or a week before. He lied about his injuries being done by Karabo when it was actually done when he was in the fight with these other men. I'm going to include a voice note of Karabo. She sent a voice note to a friend of hers, letting her know like what had happened and how he had actually laid a charge against her and what the actual truth of the matter was.
He got robbed in Bram, I think 2 days after he hit me, and he fell at Koboha. And he went to the police station and told them that that was me that assaulted him. So I just I was like, wow, you know, if someone can go to that extent. And while he was hitting me, I think I fell on top of his car and it got dented, and he told the police that I damaged his car. So I just said, you know what, this person, I don't have the energy for this, you know. God will deal with him. I'm tired personally.
Although their relationship was quite a short one, it was just like over a 6 month period, Karabo had actually grown quite codependent on Sandile, to the point where she confided in a friend that her breakup with Sandile was really, really hard on her. She was distraught. She was definitely heartbroken. She would stalk his social media, and it was after doing this that she found that literally just a couple of weeks after severely beating her up, he was posting another woman, like showing that he's in a new relationship or seeing someone new basically. So yeah, and I'm guessing it's because he probably presented himself as such, like a charmer, like, you know, like a classic narcissist, like a charmer, a really nice person, a calm person, highly religious person, slow-tempered person. So she probably fell in love with that man, and it's kind of like a state of cognitive dissonance. Like, this is what you believed him to be, and this is what he presented to you to be, but he's also abusive at the same time. But then you've grown emotions for this nice guy, but he's also this guy, and trying to make sense of the two, or like see how they both make sense, actually can cause codependency and can leave you in a severe state of confusion. So, but despite this, which I commend her for, she didn't reach out. They were still broken up. She would stalk his social media, but she didn't reach out. They were still broken up. So like a month, let's say 6 weeks later, 6 weeks after he severely beat her up, she went on a night out with Bontley, her sister, in Santon, where he lives, basically the area that he lives in. And coincidentally, he was also there at the club that they went to. And when Karabo saw this, she texted her mum and let her know, like, he's here. And her mum immediately was just like, don't acknowledge him, don't say anything, just leave immediately. Unfortunately, Karabo wasn't able to do this because an argument broke out between her and Sandile, to the point where it escalated to a physical fight, basically. And from the reports, from what I read, basically she ended up leaving the club with Sandile, and I'm guessing this is due to coercion, probably against her will. Like, he forced her or intimidated her to do so. And she left the club. She left Bontley, and she left the club with Sandile, and they went back to his Santon Sky apartment. So they got back to his house, to his flat, around 2 o'clock in the morning, and a couple of hours after that, Lolo actually called, her mum, called Karabo, asking her like where she was. I'm guessing it's because Bontley came home alone, although they had gone out, like trying to figure out like what's going on, and you texted me telling me that this guy's there, etc. Or Bontley did tell her about the argument and the physical fight, etc. So she called Karabo, and Karabo basically rushed her off the phone, saying I can't talk right now, I'll call you back later. And little did Lolo know that that would be the last conversation that she and her daughter Karabo would ever have. So after that night, Bontley and Lolo had not heard from Karabo at all, and they grew worried. Like, they were trying to contact her, couldn't get through to her. So Karabo had been missing for 3 days before Lolo and Bontley had reported her missing to the police. And within those 3 days, Bontley had actually took the initiative to go to Sandile's apartment, because she knew that that was the last place that Karabo had been, or where she went, that she knew of in after the club. But when she went there, she didn't even suspect anything. Like, she didn't even suspect Sandile or anything like that. She literally just wanted to know where she was, and if she was there, or just ignoring their calls, or she just wanted to know. So she went there with the intention to speak to Sandile, and when she got there, he wasn't there. But she managed to speak to the apartment staff and letting them know, like, hey, I'm looking for my sister Karabo, this is what she looks like, etc, etc. And eerily enough, they handed her the apartment building maintenance had found Karabo's passport and ID in the bins, and they handed it to her, like letting her know, oh, well, this is what maintenance found. And she did request to see the CCTV to just have an idea of whether she had left, or like to see what time she had left, where she could have possibly gone. And she wasn't able to get access to that because she's not authority, and so. But the ID and passport was alarming and worrying, and that raised alarms. And after that, after she had she had been given the passport and ID, and she was literally about to make her way out, Sandile had actually arrived, and he had arrived with another woman in the car passenger seat. And then she had spoken to him briefly. She was like, do you know where Karabo is? Like, I've not heard from her for however long. And And he had said, no, he doesn't know where she is. She's probably out driving in a Lamborghini with some Nigerian. So, yeah, but they found that weird. So he said that he didn't know where she was. Even more worrying because where is her sister? So she returned home, and that's when Bontley and Lolo went to the police and reported Karabo missing. Okay, so when they reported Karabo missing, the sergeants on duty or on site at the time were Sergeant, I'm going to look down to read their names because I don't memorize it, Sergeant Machidiso Maseko and Sergeant Bekisisa Molongo. So the two of them, alongside Lolo and Bontley, made their way to Sandile's apartment once more, and they arrived there around 7 p.m. And the intention was to just have law enforcement be there to just ask him a few questions of her whereabouts, like, is he sure he doesn't know where she was, and also inquire to actually get access to the CCTV, and as that was the last known place that Karabo was, to see when she had left, if she had left, etc. So when they got there at 7 o'clock, Sandile actually wasn't there. They called him on the phone and they told him, like, yeah, we're here, we want to speak to you, it's about Karabo basically. And he told them, oh, I'm not available yet, like, I'm busy at the moment, but I should be back around 9. So they waited, they didn't leave, so they waited, and in the meantime, they asked to see the CCTV of the nights before, obviously, when Karabo had returned with Sandile back to his apartment. On the CCTV, they definitely see Karabo and Sandile entering his apartment at around 2 o'clock, just past 2:30 a.m. And this was the night of the 27th of April. I forgot to include that earlier, sorry. The night past midnight, it was the 28th now, early hours of the 28th of April 2018. So they saw footage of them entering the flat at past 2:30 a.m. on the 28th of April, and then hours later they see Sandile leave the flat at 6:22 p.m. of the 28th of April, and he returns. So he leaves and returns 4 minutes later at 6:26 p.m. And then a couple of hours later, they see Sandile leave around 10 o'clock. Yeah, he leaves the house, like, he's gone quite a while. They see him return with a dustbin. So he's got this dustbin from wherever he's come from, brought it all the way up with him to his flat. He even brought it into his flat. This random dustbin that never comes into the house, that never comes indoors, he brought it all the way up. And then 20 to half an hour later, they see him leave his flat, and he's dragging this dustbin, but it does look a bit more heavier, like more, it looks a lot more heavier, like he's having a little bit of trouble, like, pulling it and pushing it, and there's a bit of linen sticking out of the lid. So the lid's closed, but there's a bit of linen trapped between the bin and the lid of the bin. Cool. So that immediately raises suspicions with the sergeants. And so whilst they've had, like, what, a good 2 hours to sift through the CCTV and clock all of that. And just to inform you, Karabo's not seen leaving the flat on the CCTV since that day up until when they were looking at it. She's not seen leaving the flat. Sandile returned around 9:30. So yeah, he got back around 9:30, and that's when they basically asked to search his flat. They went upstairs, searched his flat, and suspiciously he had a wet patch on the floor covered by a rug. So his floor was carpet, and he had a rug over a specific patch on the floor. And obviously when they lived, and so obviously whilst they're searching, one of the sergeants must have lifted it up, and when they lifted it up, they saw that it was a wet patch and some stains that were there that almost looked like blood stains, but as if it had been scrubbed out, but it was still sus. Immediately that raised alarms. So yeah, once they saw that, plus the CCTV footage, they arrested him, put him in handcuffed, arrested him, and brought him to the Morningside police station, close by to the Santon area. So yeah, He was questioned by Sergeant Molongo. Before all else, he had read him his rights, and obviously reading his rights is like, you know, the rights like you are under arrest, or you do know whatever you say can be used in court, like that. And I guess it was just a strategy or a tactic of the sergeants to just talk to him, I guess, like loosen him up, talk to him, and ask him a few questions, and then interrogate him, basically. So he asked him a few, you know, like casual questions, and then he just went into it like, do you know where Karabo is, basically? And he was like, no, he doesn't. And then the sergeant presented him with the CCTV evidence, like, you say you don't know where she is, but she's not seen leaving your apartment up until today. So what I'm about to say is the sergeant's account. After the sergeant told him about the CCTV evidence, the sergeant says that he broke down and literally said that he killed her, and he transported her body using the dustbin from the flat to his car and brought her to a secluded area, put a tire around her, and splashed petrol all over her and burned her remains. I'm guessing the sergeant didn't expect that to happen straight away, like for Sandile to confess straight away, so he wasn't prepared with the proper apparatuses to take down his statement in professional format. So it wasn't recorded or anything like that. Once Sandile made that confession, he left to go and get the what was needed to take down his statement in a professional format. Upon his return, Sandile immediately changed his tune. He denied ever confessing to killing her, and denied everything, and refused to provide an official statement about what he had confessed to doing. And when he did that, there's nothing that the sergeant could have done. So he was still held in custody because he was arrested under the suspicion of kidnapping, and they had reasonable evidence to accuse him of that. Not his confession, but the CCTV and the sketchy wet patch and plausible blood stains on his floor. So the following day at around 5 o'clock in the morning, he was questioned by another sergeant called Raja Mahundula, and he basically asked Sandile to give a statement of the last time he had seen Karabo and talk about what happened, basically. Although I stated earlier that they were broken up, even up until the point she had seen him at the nightclub, he says that a few weeks before the nightclub they were still seeing each other and still interacting with each other, spending time together, etc. And she would come over his house quite often, etc. The morning of the nightclub, so the morning of the 28th of April, he said that around 9 a.m. he had officially broke it off with Karabo, letting her know like he no longer wants to continue seeing her, interacting with her, like he wants to break things off completely. And he said that she took this badly. She was really distraught, implying that she mentally unstable, like she took it really, really hard. And yeah, although he had said that to her, they still spent the rest of the day together at his flat until he left at 6:22 p.m. like I said earlier. And he said that he left to do a quick errand. And he said upon his return at 6:26, she had stabbed herself in the neck. And when he walked in on this, he immediately panicked and thought of a plan to get rid of her body rather than call for help, because he was scared that people would accuse him of killing Karabo. Not that she had committed suicide. So his way of handling the situation was deciding to get rid of her body. So that's when you see him leave again at 10 p.m. And come back with the dustbin, and that's where he placed her body in the dustbin, transported it from his flat to the lift to his car. And before that, sorry, I forgot to mention, so when he had left at 10, he didn't have the dustbin then. So when he had left at 10 and came back like 20 to 30 minutes later with the dustbin, at that time he had scouted places, like secluded places, to be able to abandon her body. He had returned home to his familial home, so he lived in a flat but he had a home with like his parents and family and stuff. He went home saying that no one saw him, but he managed to get a tire from his home, and he also bought petrol in that 30-minute time frame. So from 6:30 up until 10 o'clock, he devised that plan. So he said he brought her to the secluded place, took her out of the dustbin, put the tire around her, put the petrol all over her body, and he literally said, I set her light and walked away and didn't look back. On to the court proceedings. So this trial was actually a trial within the trial. So the primary trial was trying to deduce whether Sergeant Molongo had actually read Sandile his rights before he said that Sandile had confessed to killing Karabo. Because if he had, then whether or not he says that he didn't make that confession or not, it can still be used in court against him. And Sandile was arguing that no, or the defense was arguing that no, he didn't read his rights because Sandile had told them that he didn't. The question was asked to Captain Molongo, captain, because sergeants in South Africa are called captains. So Captain Molongo said no, he had read him his rights because that's protocol, like that's what you do without fail. Bring someone into questioning, bring someone into interrogation, you read them their rights and then you commence. So the judge said that whether or not he said that he had confessed, the confession that Captain Molongo stated that he had made aligns with the evidence, and so arguing it is null and void basically. The actual trial, he had charges against him for assault, the grievous assault that he had did on Karabo's 22nd birthday. Another charge was obstructing the course of justice and murder. So the prosecution was putting forth the argument that he had in fact killed her rather than her committing suicide. More specifically, one of the two main points they were making is that he had left the house at 6:22 and returned at 6:26, giving Karabo 4 minutes to stab herself in the neck to commit suicide, and that's just humanly impossible, especially with the way that she had killed herself. No. So yeah, that wouldn't have been enough time for her to actually kill herself. The other point was that, judging by the way he had disposed of her body, removed it, and meticulously planned the way he would cover up her death, shows that he is capable of murder. On the defense's side, Bontley and another friend of Karabo had testified against Sandile, talking about the time that she had been severely beaten up by him, and the defense was saying that none of the people that had testified against him had actually seen him physically attack or abuse Karabo, so all in all it should be deemed hearsay as opposed to actual viable evidence to be used against Sandile. And they argued that he's definitely not guilty of murder and that it was actually suicide, and he's only guilty of the lesser charges, which is obstructing the course of justice and the assault charge. So now on to the verdict. The judge had questioned the claim that Karabo had committed suicide because had she committed suicide, Sandile's knee-jerk reaction would have been to call for help, raise alarms, call the security, as opposed to thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get rid of her body because they might think it's me. He called him out on meticulously covering up the evidence. He was only in this situation now because he was caught in a web of lies. One of the lasting statements was that Sandile was a man that gave men a bad name, and stated that he only showed remorse for his actions because he was caught, not because he actually felt bad for them. So all in all, Sandile was found guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years for the assault charge, 4 years for the attempt to obstruct justice, and 30 years for murder. But in the interest of mercy, the court ordered that his lesser charges, the assault and obstruction, be lowered to 1 year each. So rather than him doing 39 years in prison, he is currently doing 32 years in prison. And yeah, that's the verdict, and that's what happened. He had in fact killed her and gotten rid of her body and burned her remains. Inhumane, that's the only word that I can use to describe him and his actions. Inhumane, just, yeah. I just wanted to add a little bit of context, or just a little bit of information. Like, evidently this case is a case of domestic violence, and more specifically, domestic violence comes underneath the umbrella of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is rooted in the societal power imbalance between men and women, whereby it's tilted more in favour of men. And the power imbalance that I'm talking about is specifically referring to patriarchal power structures. For example, male leadership is seen as the norm. Men are treated as superior to women, and more specifically, men being able to perpetuate violence against women with impunity. Now, thank God in this case, he was tried and he was sent to prison, but a lot of the time that doesn't happen. And these patriarchal power structures actually then give birth to hegemonic masculinity, which basically legitimizes the dominance of a man over a woman, whereby a woman is seen as subordinate to a man. Basically, her actions are a reflection on him and his honor and his masculinity and his ego. And if the woman is to undermine his masculinity, the man enacts abuse, and more specifically all types of abuse, you know, like mental, emotional, verbal abuse, and more specifically physical abuse, which in fact a lot of the time can be fatal. And I specifically wanted to add that in because even in the documentary that I was watching, where Lolo said something that really stood out to me, where she was like, she just wanted to confront him after Karabo had told her that he had severely beaten her up. Lolo actually wanted to confront Sandile and ask him what gives him the right, what makes him think he can do this to someone. And one of the fundamental, intrinsic, foundational, probably like subconscious reasonings for this is the patriarchal power structures and hegemonic masculinity, making him feel as though he has dominance over his partner at that time, who was Karabo. So that was my very first true crime video, my true crime case. I hope it was good. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, bye.